Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. The Miller family has a curse. Every heir must marry a woman with a fate that brings prosperity to her husband. Otherwise, the entire family will be doomed to ruin. And I just so happened to be the woman fated to marry Nathan Miller. Since I was little, I knew I was meant to marry Nathan. But Nathan never loved me. The one he loved was my cousin Emily Grant. And he didn't even need to defy the family vow. I begged him over and over not to go through with it. But in the end, Emily was heartbroken and jumped into the river, taking her own life. Eventually, I got what I was supposed to. I married Nathan. But in the 3rd year of our marriage, despite me being pregnant, Nathan pushed me into the river without hesitation. I clung to him, pleading with all my strength, begging him to let me give birth to our child. But he didn't flinch. "Claire, what's this so-called prosperous fate of yours? That kind of nonsense has been around for centuries. Who believes in it anymore? You use that fate as an excuse to trap me. You're the reason Emily died. So now go down and keep her company." He pushed me into the icy river. I was quickly swept away by the current and drowned. When I opened my eyes again, it was the day Nathan told his parents he wanted to marry Emily. This time, I watched it all unfold with cold indifference. I wanted to see for myself. Without my fate, would the Miller family truly fall apart? "Mom, I'm marrying Emily." "I don't like Claire," Nathan said, his voice laced with frustration and suppressed anger. "It's been so many years and you all still believe this kind of nonsense. Family ruined. That's just something women who want to marry into rich families make up. Our business is thriving. There's no way we'll go bankrupt." I listened to his words and let out a cold laugh. He hadn't even noticed that the Miller family was already starting to show signs of decline. Without marrying a woman with a prosperous fate, they wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. And Emily not only lacked that fate, she actually brought misfortune. In my past life, I was the one who pointed out her inauspicious destiny. And that was what made Mr. and Mrs. Miller firmly oppose Nathan's decision to marry her. But in the end, I was the one who met a tragic end. There's no way I'd involve myself with that family again. "Uncle Miller, I really love Nathan," Emily cried as she pleaded beside me. "Please let us be together." Mr. and Mrs. Miller looked torn. Nathan was their only son and they'd spoiled him all his life. Now that he was saying he loved Emily, of course, they wanted to grant his wish. "Claire, why don't you and Emily both marry Nathan?" Mrs. Miller said without any hesitation. "I know we have monogamy now, but you love Nathan too. How about this? Let Nathan and Emily get the marriage certificate, and you can stay with him, too. You don't need an official title." I looked at Mrs. Miller and smiled. In my last life, I had bluntly revealed Emily's bad fate, and they didn't even consult me about it. But now, I saw everything clearly. From the beginning, Mr. and Mrs. Miller had planned it this way. They adored Nathan too much to see him marry someone he didn't love. But at the same time, they wanted the benefits of my destiny. Looking at it now, I realized I had been used by the entire family. "I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Miller," I said as I stood up and looked directly at them. "Since you've already picked your daughter-in-law, I won't get in the way." As soon as I said those words, their expressions darkened noticeably. They had never expected me to refuse. After all, they knew how deeply I loved Nathan. But hearing me now, they clearly couldn't believe it. "Claire, didn't you love Nathan more than anyone?" Mrs. Miller asked, clearly stunned. I gave a calm smile. "Mrs. Miller, Nathan loves Emily, so I choose to let go." "What do you mean by that?" Nathan frowned slightly and looked at me. "You don't want to marry me anymore? Didn't you say you'd only ever marry Emily? Isn't it enough that I'm stepping aside for you?" I looked at Nathan coldly as I spoke. My words silenced him. I knew from the beginning that he had always wanted to marry both of us, Emily and me. As for me, I was just the wife he'd never dare acknowledge in public. If that's how they saw me, why should I keep letting them walk all over me? "Claire, are you really sure about this?" Nathan stared at me. "I'm willing to marry you and you're still not satisfied? Look at you. You're an orphan. If I don't marry you, who will?" His voice was cutting, arrogant. I met his gaze calmly. "That's not your concern, Mr. Miller," I replied coolly. What he didn't know was that a woman like me, with a fate that brings fortune to her husband, never had to worry about getting married. The only reason I stayed unmarried for so long was because I'd been so determined to marry him. I had turned down more than a few good men along the way. All my loyalty and patience had only earned me betrayal from his entire family. Since the Millers had already made their choice, there was no reason for me to stay. I stood up and looked straight at the three of them. "I'll be going now. Claire, I know you love Nathan." Emily's voice came from behind me, thick with fake sincerity. "But you should think about his feelings, too. If you really loved him, how could you not want to marry him?" I turned and looked at her. Her eyes were brimming with satisfaction. "I don't love him anymore. He's yours now," I said coldly. My words made Nathan's face instantly darken. "Claire, you better think this through." "Don't worry," I said with a smile. "I've thought about it very clearly. Mr. Miller, I wish you and my cousin a long and happy life together." With that, I turned and walked out of the Miller home. Behind me, Mrs. Miller still looked anxious. She tugged on Nathan's arm and whispered, "Nathan, maybe you should just marry Claire too. Let Emily be the second wife." At that, Nathan turned to look at Emily's face full of hurt and said protectively, "Don't worry about Claire. You know what she's like. She's used her so-called prosperous fate to bully Emily for years. She's been dying to marry into our family, and now she's just throwing a tantrum. Give her a few days, she'll come back, begging me to marry her." I heard Nathan's voice as I stepped out the door and let out a cold, mocking laugh. Come back. There was no way I'd ever look back. This time, I had my own life to live. I pulled out my phone and made a call. As soon as the line connected, I said clearly, "Are you still interested in getting married?" As we walked out of the marriage registration office, Aiden Walker couldn't stop smiling. "Claire, I never imagined you'd actually choose to marry me," he said, glancing sideways at me. He was one of the most notorious heirs in the elite circles. We first met at a party a few years ago. From that day on, Aiden had pursued me persistently. Everyone back then knew I was Nathan Miller's fiancé, but Aiden didn't back down. In fact, his interest only grew stronger. He and Nathan had always been rivals. Whenever they were in the same room, sparks flew. I knew Nathan hated Aiden. And because of that, I slowly began to distance myself from Aiden as well. I still remember the look on Aiden's face when I finally turned him down. It was one of quiet disappointment. Eventually, he gave up and walked away. That day, I still remember Aiden came to see me one last time. He told me, "If there ever comes a day when Nathan stops loving you, I'll come back and marry you." At the time, I thought there was no way Aiden and I could ever be together. I loved Nathan too deeply. But even now, I can still remember when I was drowning in the river in my past life. I saw Aiden in the distance rushing toward me with panic in his eyes. Unfortunately, it was too late. "Claire, I still have some business overseas," Aiden said, turning to look at me after we got in the car. "I'll wrap it up and come back soon." I smiled and nodded. I was already married to Aiden Walker. From now on, I would never be anyone else's wife. My fate could only benefit one man in this life. As for Nathan Miller, he could stay buried in the mess he made. After seeing Aiden off personally, I turned and walked away with a new sense of freedom. I returned home. After my parents passed away a few years ago, I had been living alone. Back then, Mr. and Mrs. Miller wanted me to move in with them since they had already considered me their daughter-in-law, but Nathan strongly objected to it at the time. So, in the end, I didn't move in. Looking back now, Nathan was probably already involved with Emily by then. Thinking of that, I couldn't help but mock myself for being so foolish. There had always been so many signs, so many flaws in Nathan and Emily's story. I had known perfectly well that Nathan didn't love me, yet I still clung to the idea of being with him. That's what led to everything falling apart in the end. When I was drowning in the river, I could feel the crushing weight of despair. But in this life, something like that would never happen again. Just as I was reflecting on all of this, I received a message from Aiden Walker. He had arrived overseas. "Once I wrap up business here, I'll come back and give you the grand wedding you deserve." I smiled at his message and replied, "Take care and be safe." Then I ended the call and got ready for bed. I hadn't expected that. Half asleep, I suddenly got a call from Nathan. "Claire, where are you?" His voice came through the phone, cold and emotionless. "Is there something you need, Nathan?" I asked, frowning slightly. "Claire, are you home right now?" "I'm coming over," he said without answering my question. Hearing that, I replied coolly, "There's no need, Nathan. It's late and I'm already resting. If you have something to say it now. If not, don't disturb my sleep." As soon as I said that, I could hear his breathing grow noticeably heavier on the other end. "Claire," he said, voice low and commanding. "I'm coming over now. Come out and meet me." I laughed coldly at his tone, as if he still had any authority over me, and without hesitation, I hung up. Then I blocked his number. Nathan and I had absolutely nothing to do with each other anymore. There was no reason to keep his number in my phone. After doing that, I went straight to sleep. Being woken up in the middle of the night is always unpleasant. But just as I was drifting off again, I heard loud, frantic knocking at the door. It was intense and persistent. I got up and checked the security camera. There he was, Nathan, standing right outside my door with a stormy expression, eyes filled with rage. Seeing him there made me frown. Then it dawned on me. Today, Aiden and I had registered our marriage. I had once been Nathan's fated match. Over the years, he had taken over the entire Miller family business. With the engagement between us, even though we weren't married, things had always gone smoothly for him. But the moment I registered my marriage with Aiden, that engagement was nullified. What I didn't expect was how quickly the effects would hit him. Now it was clear Nathan had run into trouble, and that's why he suddenly came looking for me. "Claire, open the damn door right now." Nathan's angry voice rang out from outside. I looked at the screen and let out a cold laugh. I didn't respond. I turned around and walked back into my bedroom without acknowledging him. I sent a message to building security. "A man is banging on my door and harassing me. Please call the police and have him removed." Soon after, I got a reply. Through the security feed, I watched a few guards arrive. Nathan tried to argue with them at first, but once they told him that I was the one who asked them to escort him out, his face twisted with fury. In the end, he had no choice but to storm off. I thought that would be the end of it. That after everything, Nathan would finally leave me alone. But I was wrong. The next morning, I got up early and went out for a run. I had barely stepped outside my building when Nathan showed up with a couple of men and forced me into a car. "Nathan, what the hell are you doing?" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. My eyes were full of fear as I stared at him. "Claire, didn't you want to marry me?" Nathan looked at me and said, "We're going to the wedding venue right now." I froze the moment I heard those words. "Nathan, what are you talking about? Didn't you say you'd only ever marry Emily? What is this supposed to mean now?" I asked urgently. "Claire, the one I'm marrying now is you," Nathan said coldly, his eyes locked on mine. As he spoke, he grabbed me and started dragging me away toward the wedding venue. At that moment, I knew something was very wrong. "Nathan, I'm not going to marry you," I shouted, my emotions spiraling out of control. In a panic, I quietly unlocked my phone, trying to call Aiden. But just as I pulled it out, Nathan noticed. Without hesitation, he snatched it from my hands and right in front of me, tossed it out the car window. "Claire, once the wedding is over, I'll get you a new one," he said firmly, leaving no room for discussion. His words made my face go pale. I struggled with all my strength, but several bodyguards pinned me down tightly. Nathan brought me to a grand event hall. Inside, I saw many familiar faces, people from the city's elite. In the distance, Emily stood glaring at me with fury. On the other side of the room were Mr. and Mrs. Miller, smiling and greeting guests like proud hosts. When they spotted me, they immediately stepped forward. "Claire, you're here. Hurry, we've already arranged for a makeup artist. We'll make sure you look absolutely stunning today. You're going to be the most beautiful bride." I stared at them, furious. When did I ever say I was marrying Nathan? "Claire, haven't you always wanted to marry our Nathan?" Mrs. Miller smiled as she spoke. "We're already holding the wedding. What more could you possibly want?" I scoffed and said, "Did you forget that just yesterday Nathan told me he was going to marry Emily, not me?" At my words, Mr. and Mrs. Miller's expressions shifted slightly, a flash of discomfort flickering across their faces. Mr. Miller quickly stepped forward and said, "Claire, Nathan knows he was wrong. That's why he planned this grand wedding for you. To surprise you." I let out a cold laugh. "A surprise? Is that what you call this? Even if there was a wedding, shouldn't I be informed and agree to it first? You kidnapped me, dragged me here, and now you're forcing me to marry Nathan. And you call this normal? Enough, Claire. Go get your makeup done," Nathan said, walking up to me with a stern face. "When did I ever agree to marry you?" I looked him straight in the eyes and asked coldly. He didn't answer right away. His expression grew stiff, and then he said in a low voice, "Claire, I'm giving you a chance here. Don't make a scene or I'll really get angry." I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "Nathan, I never had any intention of marrying you. This wedding isn't happening." With that, I turned around and started to leave. But just as I took a step, members of the Miller family surrounded me, blocking my way. Mr. and Mrs. Miller grabbed onto me tightly. "Claire, didn't you say you'd only marry our Nathan?" Mr. Miller pleaded. "Yes, Claire," Mrs. Miller added quickly. "Nathan planned all of this to surprise you. He's been preparing it for a long time. Once you marry into our family, we'll treat you like a queen." While they kept coaxing me, Nathan stood off to the side, face still cold, but his eyes kept flicking toward Emily. As for Emily, she looked at me with an expression full of grievance and hurt. Looking at this entire ridiculous scene, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "I'm already married," I said flatly. "I'm legally registered with someone else." I turned to leave again, but the next second, Nathan grabbed me by the arm. His eyes locked onto mine and he growled, "Claire, what did you just say?" Nathan's gaze bored into me, and I could clearly see the fury burning behind his eyes. Facing Nathan's rage, I simply smiled. "Yes, Nathan," I said. "I'm already married." "Claire, do you even understand what you're saying?" he snapped, his face grim, eyes glaring at me. I met his stare calmly and replied, "Of course I understand what I'm saying, and whether I'm married or not has nothing to do with you. Now please let me go." But there was no way Nathan was going to let me go. He held on to me tightly, refusing to loosen his grip. I struggled with all my might, but his grasp only grew stronger. "Claire," he said, voice laced with condescension, "I know you're just trying to piss me off. Don't you think this little act is childish? You just left my house yesterday. When would you have had time to get married? And who would you even marry?" He let out a mocking laugh, then glared at me again. "I'm telling you, Claire, I've given you more than enough face. Now get into the damn dress. All our relatives and friends are here. Don't keep them waiting." I stared at him coldly. "Nathan, I really am married. Let me go." His face turned even colder at my words. "Claire, take a good look at yourself. You're just an orphan. Who else would marry you besides me? Get dressed. From now on you'll stay in the Miller family and take care of Nathan. You don't need to worry about anything else." Suddenly, Emily's voice chimed in from behind him. "Exactly, Claire. Just do what's right from now on. Just focus on being a good wife to Nathan." I froze at her words. Then the truth hit me like a wave. I turned to Nathan and said, "You want to marry me? Then go register the marriage with me. Do you dare?" Nathan's expression immediately stiffened, and I caught the smug look on Emily's face. That's when I finally understood it all. The Millers thought they had me trapped. Nathan had already registered his marriage with Emily yesterday, and yet today, they were trying to force me to hold a public wedding ceremony with him. My gaze turned icy. Nathan saw it too. He frowned and said coldly, "Emily is the one I love. If you truly love me, you'll have to accept everything about me, including Emily." "I don't love you anymore, Nathan," I said quietly but firmly. "And I don't want to marry you. Also, I am married. This wedding today, you should be standing next to Emily, not me." Nathan glared at me with disbelief. "You keep claiming you're married. Who the hell would marry you besides me? Obviously that would be me." The voice came from behind me, bold and a little cocky. I turned and saw Aiden Walker striding into the venue with a group of men behind him. Nathan whipped his head around. The moment he saw Aiden, his eyes turned ice cold. Without a word, he turned back to me and suddenly slapped me hard across the face. "Claire, I knew you were nothing but trash. How dare you get involved with Aiden Walker? I cried out in pain from the unexpected blow. Aiden's expression darkened instantly. Without hesitation, he ordered his men. Teach him a lesson. Several of Aiden's men rushed toward Nathan, grabbed him, and began beating him fiercely. Meanwhile, Aiden hurried over to me. His eyes were filled with worry. When I assured him I was okay, only then did he relax slightly. Claire, when I got your call and didn't hear anything on the line, I knew something had gone wrong, he said, his voice low but urgent. Luckily, everything went smoothly after I got back last night. I even took an earlier flight this morning to surprise you. He gently held my hand, his eyes filled with concern. And in that moment, I could clearly feel it. Aiden genuinely cared about me. This kind of care, this kind of protection, I had never experienced in my past life with Nathan. Aiden's bodyguards pinned several members of the Miller family to the ground, and chaos broke out instantly. The guests rushed in to stop the fight. Some of them recognized Aiden and started shouting angrily. Aiden, we know you like Claire, but how could you crash Nathan and Claire's wedding like this? Others joined in, accusing Aiden of ruining the event. Hearing all their complaints, I quickly spoke up. Everyone, you've got it wrong. Aiden isn't here to crash the wedding. We've already registered our marriage. The moment those words left my mouth, many of the guests froze. They looked at me, then at Aiden. A few of them even asked, if you and Aiden are already married, then why? They trailed off and turned to look at the Miller family sprawled on the floor. Don't misunderstand, I said with a cold smile. Nathan already registered his marriage with Emily. They are the ones who belong together. As for why he got hit, it's because Nathan had me abducted and dragged here by force. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Millers' long-standing reputation wasn't news to anyone. Years ago, Nathan's grandfather had searched across the entire elite circle for a woman with a prosperous fate, and eventually found me. At the time, the Millers had publicly declared that I was to be their future daughter-in-law. No one ever expected that I would end up marrying into the Walker family, and that Nathan would marry my cousin, Emily. Aiden pulled me close and looked Nathan dead in the eye. Nathan, I'm taking my wife with me, and if you ever try to mess with her again, I won't let it go so easily. With that, he led me away without looking back. The Millers, left behind, looked utterly humiliated. The wedding still went ahead as planned, but the bride was no longer me. It was Emily. Because of that, the truth behind everything quickly came to light. In fact, it was Aiden who made sure the news got out. Once people learned that Nathan had already married Emily, yet still tried to force me into a wedding just because of my lucky fate, the backlash was immediate. Guests started questioning the integrity of the Miller family. Later, Aiden told me what I hadn't known. Nathan had lost several major contracts the day before. It turned out in his rush to get the marriage certificate with Emily, he missed a crucial meeting with a client. That client was so offended he walked away, and the deal fell apart. When Mr. and Mrs. Miller found out, they panicked. In desperation, they convinced Nathan to marry me by force. That's how everything unraveled into the scene we had witnessed. But now that I was married to Aiden, how could any of that concern me? On the day of our wedding, Aiden and I left the country. The Walker family had far more business overseas, so we stayed abroad for half a year. During that time, Aiden and I expanded the company rapidly, even opening branches in several other countries. Business kept booming. Meanwhile, the Millers began to crumble after the failed wedding stunt. Over those 6 months, things only got worse for them. And once we returned home, we heard from others just how far the Miller family had fallen. Apparently, after Nathan married Emily, she started handling parts of the business. But Emily didn't understand anything about how the company worked. She even submitted the wrong orders. By the time the company mass-produced everything, they realized the products were all wrong. The materials had been purchased with borrowed money, funds they could barely afford to spend. The clients rejected the faulty products, and everything was left to rot in their warehouses. That was when the Millers realized the situation had spiraled completely out of control. On top of that, many in the elite circle began to question the Millers' character. Some even brought up how they had forcibly taken me before the wedding, with public opinion against them. No one was willing to offer help, not even a loan. Even the banks refused them, saying their debt ratio was too high. At that point, the millers hadn't been able to pay their workers for 3 months. The staff went on strike. On the very day Aiden and I returned to the country, I received a phone call from Nathan. "Claire, I know I was wrong. Please come back." His voice trembled over the phone. "As long as you come back, I promise I'll love you for the rest of my life. I know you don't really like Aiden Walker. Deep down you still love me." I listened to Nathan's voice on the other end of the line, and let out a quiet laugh. "Nathan, I think you've misunderstood," I said calmly. "Aiden and I are doing very well. In fact, we're expecting a child of our own." As I gently caressed my belly, I smiled. This life growing inside me, this child that belonged to Aiden and me, was my truest happiness. Nathan kept pleading with me to come back, but I had no intention of entertaining him. I ended the call without hesitation. I had long since stopped caring about anything to do with Nathan Miller. After hanging up, I never bothered to follow any more news about him. But a week later, Aiden came home and told me Nathan had gone completely bankrupt. He said the Miller family hadn't paid their employees for 3 months, and whatever little money they had left had been taken by Emily when she fled. Once the workers realized there was no money left, they were furious. They dragged the entire Miller family out and beat them in public. If the police hadn't shown up in time, Nathan might have been beaten to death. Eventually, the court seized both the Miller company and their private estate. Everything they owned was auctioned off to pay back the workers' salaries. Aiden even bought a large portion of the Miller family's former assets at that auction. As for Nathan, he had no choice but to move into a small rental apartment with Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I heard they were also deeply in debt, owing money to multiple loan sharks. Of course, those lenders didn't care about their sad stories. They came to collect every day, threatening and beating Nathan constantly. In the end, pushed to the edge and drowning in despair, Nathan locked himself in the tiny apartment on a rainy night and committed suicide by burning charcoal. By the time anyone found his body, it had already begun to rot. Meanwhile, Aiden and I welcomed our child into the world, right on schedule. A few months later, I was at home caring for the baby when I received a call from the police. "Is this Claire Miller, cousin of Emily Grant?" the officer asked. They told me Emily had taken the last of Nathan's money and disappeared into the world of gambling. She had lost everything and even racked up a mountain of debt. With nowhere to run and no one left to help her, she jumped off a building to escape the debt collectors. Since I was listed as her only remaining family, the police hoped I would claim her body. "I'm sorry," I replied. "I have nothing to do with her anymore." I refused. Then I turned and looked at Aiden, who was gently rocking our baby in his arms. This life was mine now, beautiful, peaceful, and full of promise. And just like the legend said, the Millers had fallen completely and utterly.